what we're trying to explore is what opportunities there are for the textile waste that doesn't get mechanically recycled, and that doesn't. We also have a fantastic organization that does stuff with the end of sale garments from retailers. So they're in perfect condition. They just would otherwise have been burnt, or I don't know what the retailers historically did with them. But what about all the stuff in between that is not quite good enough for secondhand, or doesn't get sold on secondhand? So we're looking at ways to deal with deal with that, and we think there's job creation opportunities there. But there's a lot of research to be done, and experimenting. And I'm sure Rudo is going to help me with this, because I'm going to come and pick your brain.
Yeah.
I'm also so impressed with what the Imaloa collective is doing in Mauritius. I'm sure you, Rudo, you're following them. They're just doing such lovely work.
Yeah. When I said bye, really, you know, I was thinking about the designers who, of course, they are coming on and they are doing all these things, right? When I mentioned bye, I was thinking that obviously there are some designers who may be doing this for a living, for example. And, you know, are they doing it for a living, or they're just doing it to sort of like show appreciation that, you know, they are aware about all these things surrounding fashion design.
Sorry, having that meeting is
No, I think the designers that we're working with, they're making a living out of it. You know, so I've noticed how there's one designer two designers who are kind of both have had international recognition, who hadn't previously thought about themselves and their practices, and through the one I'm thinking of particularly is now on a big program with the Woolmark competition, and he has just apparently, I mean, is changing the way he thinks and the way he works. And another designer has started doing, you know, she did one little experiment, did another little experiment, and now almost all the work she's doing has got elements of, and it's just incredible stuff. I think people are really thinking through things very carefully. The woman who won our Changemaker Award was really, really interesting. Actually, she mostly makes her living out of wedding dresses, which are incredibly single use and, you know, on the top of the list of single use fashion. And she has been going through an exercise of using plastic bags, recycled plastic bags, to create her creations. It costs 20,000 Rand to buy one. I mean, it's incredible the work that she does and puts into it, but it's recycled plastic and recyclable. And her next collection is made out of fabric waste that a Rewoven has given to her. So it's just interesting how the mind shifts, and it just takes one or two little inspirations or projects or something, and then it just changes the whole working experience. And that, I think, is what TWYG has done, is you know, through our interventions, whether they're media interventions or the TWYG Awards, or a little event here or there. We do a swap shop. We've done some mending workshops. It just, you know, it's just amazing how, and I'm sure, I don't know, you really do this as well. It just takes a little intervention to change somebody's thinking. It's very, I love it. I mean, I think for me, what I'm very excited by is change of behavior and how stories can do that. And increasingly going into experiment, you know, not just stories, but experiences. And this is quite new to me. So Nick, it's nice to hear. I'd like to hear more from what you do, but the power in that. And you too, Betty, workshops and speaking to people and traveling around the country to change behavior and change mindsets.
Rudo, you're there. How is it going in Zimbabwe? I know you are coming from being a fashion designer yourself and then transitioning into being an activist. And yeah, how is it going? How have people, you know, responded to all the efforts that you are making in Zimbabwe, really?
What I would say is it's a step-by-step process for us in Zimbabwe. And when I really just started looking at how we could start using waste again was, I would say, maybe back in 2016, where the economy kind of did another dip. And, again, we were wondering, where does our material come from? So we had already started having these conversations. But then when it came to access of material, material was getting expensive. So as you know, and then the usual designer complaints were around, well, there's secondhand clothes. So we have a huge secondhand clothing market here, and very illegal, but it thrives. So, designers were like, now we can't compete with the clothes that are coming through the borders. But once we buy new fabric and start designing, it's just not economically sustainable. So what I then discovered, again, just through a journey process, this is mostly through Fashion Revolution and just, personal research and value, like my value system, started seeing how we could start collecting this waste and using it and, making it something new. So we'd take clothes, quite a few designers have experimented taking denim, and using denim as it's long wearing and long lasting, and making accessories, making things like jackets, dresses, just out of pairs of jeans. So it's been a slow take, but what I've been doing now, I suppose the activism role, is encouraging designers that I work with to try as much as they can to incorporate something into their collections, either by way of reducing material waste or using waste that is coming out of, and I think I should stop calling it waste, using offcuts, material offcuts from factory floors, using things like the denim. Sometimes, in the secondhand markets, you will find really, really good cotton products in there, really good quality that you can take and reuse into something new. So we started off just as Fashion Revolution Zimbabwe, by creating a designer challenge. That was back in 2019. And it was the first challenge where we onboarded designers to come on, make something new, but without buying any new material. So again, once you allow a designer into that space to see what they can create from the materials that are available, you'll actually see, just similar to what Jackie was saying, a change in pattern. So most of the designers don't actually go back to the way they were designing before. There's a lot of thought into what is going into their production, into the way they're producing. Last year, we onboarded another 2 designers who were actually using end of roll fabrics, and they would actually go to fabric stores, because what we realized happens is, once you maybe get to the end of the roll, the fabric store doesn't sell the 0.5 meter or the 1 meter if no one wants to buy it. They just put it all back in a warehouse. So one of our young designers discovered this warehouse and again has made it open source. And we went into the warehouse and could pull fabric and start seeping through. So our journey is very experiential, like we're experimenting a lot. This year we've onboarded another 3 designers to again just go through the circular process, and they are using offcuts from accessories design. We've got accessories designers, shoe designers, and a fashion designer who's actually looking to work by making new clothes using block patterns, but is collecting pieces of fabric. So for us, it is really about reusing. I was forced into the space, and so were many of my peers, because of lack of access. So you have to make use of what you have, right? And we're very resourceful. Zimbabweans are very resourceful. So we found a way to start this trend. And I hope it's not a trend, but it's something that is actually going to be embedded in our culture. Because when you look at our history, we are sustainable by nature. We do mend, we do take care of our clothes. We do have multifunctional pieces of clothing. The only thing that I think has happened is that now we've opened our borders into the secondhand clothing. And by allowing that to come into the borders, now we're facing that competition. So fast fashion is now achievable from our perspective. Whereas by now, again, working with young designers and designers in that space that are making and producing and bringing in this method of thinking, I think we can balance it out whilst, we work again in the background on policy change around the excess material that is landing in the borders, around what happens and how you properly dispose of material. We've got a lot of designer collaborations between clothing designers and accessories designers, where we don't need the offcuts. So we will literally bag them up and give them to accessories designers. I found this as well in the artisan communities, where artisans are incorporating just even things like plastic into their weaving, incorporating those textiles into their weaving processes. So we can definitely give this a long life. And yeah, that's basically where I'm from, or the journey that we're taking. So we're still very new at this. I'm still very new at it, but we are literally finding our way through every project. And the more designers we're onboarding, we're building a larger community of designers that can mentor younger designers and their peers in the creative industry.
Rudo, has there been any kind of support from government towards your efforts?
No, we're kind of under the radar because it's very tricky when you look at things like secondhand clothing and the policies involved. So our movement, I would say we are activists. So we're very under the radar and making change in our interim space. And by doing that, we are hoping to then engage the government, as opposed to going to the government and saying, stop doing this and stop doing that, where there is nothing to prove what effect it has on the actual economy and on us. So the best way we can do it is just start cleaning up. So the way we started our process is, let's start cleaning up our immediate area of work. And the only way we can do that is by coming together as a collective of creatives, designers, artists, and cleaning up that mess, whilst also preparing for the talks around policy, which I think will be another 3 to 5 years at the rate that we're going.
I think Anoop mentioned minimizing consumption. I don't know, Anoop, are you there?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'm looking at, we are talking the fashion industry, right? And when we start talking about, the fashion industry and everything else, we are talking production, we are talking employment, we are talking all these things. So now my thinking is, if we go so much into minimizing what we consume and things like that, are we not maybe this is just for are we not in a way reducing on production? Maybe we are going to reduce on employment levels or something. I don't know. Anoop, you are the one who brought that up. Maybe you are on mute.
Oh yeah, tell me something. Do you think the kind of clothes we produce in all over India, the human race in this world actually require all this? This is a basic question. If you don't, if you don't ask this question, then your production is going haywire. I know since long I was working in home furnishing division in a textile mill. It's a big mill. One day they stopped their home furnishing division because of what? Because they import lot of second hand home furnishing material from Turkey, and India is flooded with that. In these days India is flooded with that. That means India don't require any more production. There are still people, they are producing in India, but I know they're facing a huge lot of competition. Europe and other part, they are making lot of extra productions. what they cannot sell. So why they are producing? If you ask this question, that means you're asking this question is actually supporting circular design concept, isn't it? Isn't it? you know Only fashion industry and only textile industry is not there to support for the employment and everything. For the cause of supporting employment, you cannot produce things what you don't require. This is a very basic question I am asking. You may say that this person is talking entirely different than design concept, but yes, it is happening everywhere. The world is in a different mode. We all have to put down our step and work together to bring this world in a good mode, in a circular environmental mode. Half of the world, half of the people, we all destroyed our environmental thing. No, for what? Betty, I am telling you, uh, all these wardrobes in my house are full of clothes. We don't know what to do. Last 4 years, I am not buying any trousers because my trousers are not. They are all fine, all fine. I am not growing anymore.
Okay.
I am not growing
And you're not
anymore.
becoming any smaller.
I am not becoming any smaller. So what do I do? Why I require more trouser? I don't know.
Okay.
Because you are producing new fashion, that's why I have to wear it. Because you don't know what to do with your fashion designs, so I have to wear it. Look, whatever I am speaking, it may sound very, very odd, but yes, it is. I am asking the basic questions. If you don't ask all these basic questions and only doing product design or this design, that means you are not concerned of this world. You are not concerned of anything else. You are only a designer. I refuse to be only a designer. That's why I'm here.
So much,
I
Anu.
just refuse to be only a designer.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Nick. Are you there? Nick, are you there?
Yes, I'm Betty. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm going to ask this question because you have worked with a community set up before for all designers and all. I'm going to ask, is secular economy realistic? Are we being realistic when we are talking about secular economy?
Well, I think obviously Anu asked these, really fundamental questions, and I think it is realistic because in a way we don't have a lot of choice. I guess it's how far we're prepared to go before we recognize the fundamental aspects of what this means, and of course we're in a context at the moment where our very fundamental ideas and ideals and thoughts about the world are being challenged, and I guess realistic. I think again, for me, this is why culture is so important, because as Anu's talked about this notion of why we want something, we have to uncouple this from this notion that want is specifically about what a retailer or a brand tells us that that's want, and again, looking around the world, I mean, you can't go anywhere without finding a Nike t-shirt or these things, and as you say, rightly or wrongly, the demand, it's about the demand, isn't it? It's about the culture that sits around the demand that wants that thing, whether it be new, secondhand, recycled, virgin material, whether that material comes from the forest next door or whether that material comes from the other side of the world. And I think this idea of mindsets I really like, because it's this idea of the kind of malleability of this stuff and change, and it feels very much to me like it is a psychological thing, you know. How do you create demand in all places of the world for things that are either locally sourced or environmentally sourced and so on? This conversation is being had right now, but the realism comes when people, like you say, when Anu really astutely identifies when need and want become different things. And I think that for me, that's what makes this, as we've all identified, I think, an issue of psychology, an issue of culture, an issue of behavior. And that's where it gets very interesting for me personally, and I think for many designers, because in many ways we know how to take stuff from here and turn it into something else. We know the technicalities of polyester, we know this and that, but what we don't understand is the diversity of desire and the way that we each think about these things. And that's the bit that I feel having these international conversations and helps to, I think, bring realism to this idea that it is about, as I was speaking about earlier on, a kind of democratized design. And I don't really like that word because obviously it's been hijacked in terms of its sort of political nature, but it is about a kind of freedom, a freedom of expression, a renegotiation around this idea of diversity and difference, rather than kind of monocultures of want and you know, international tribes that all look the same and all behave in the same way, and therefore, you know, that has a sort of, you know, corrosive impact on diversity and difference. And I think, as I say, for me, the positivity around a lot of what could be happening is about isolation. It's about connecting with individualism, but in a way that isn't hijacked by large corporations, or is much more about people re-engaging with what they think and what they feel and how they want to express themselves. I mean, I grew up in the 1980s at a time in the UK where there was huge diversity in music, in culture, in different tribes. There were, and that's not always a good thing, but that seems to have really been drowned out. And subculture to me just doesn't exist in the UK sector the same way it did. And I think that's a very
You're on mute, Nick. Nick, he's on mute. I don't know.
yeah, that was my cue to shut up.
Just for a few seconds. Just for a few seconds.
Yeah, somebody rightly muted me. That was the right thing to do. But I think it's about re-owning this space as individuals. And I think, you know, that is that realistic? I don't know. I don't know. But I see hope, and I see a response against the homogeny of brands and this lack of subculture that, you know, has been drowned out. I hope we can refine that. And I think circular economy fits very well with that idea of you know, recapsulating, re-owning what we use, what we buy, what we make, and how we think and express ourselves that way. I don't know, that may be, like I say, an ideology that's
okay.
not realistic.
Jackie, I think the last one we're almost like winding up, but Jackie, I wanted to know what you think, or how you think secular design can change the fashion industry for good. You know, how do you think it can? I think that also goes to you, Rudo, and Anup. How do you think you know, secular design can change, or how can we change the trajectory of fashion for good, really, using secular design? I think we can all answer that one, I think. Yeah.
I think what Anu said earlier is so important. The idea of desires and wants, and what are we making, and who are we making it for, and why are we making it, and who needs it. And the fashion industry has been fabricated really in many ways to push sales, and it's and to make, there's certain very rich people who make money out of clothes, and it's a complete fantasy and fabrication. And if we had to work out how many clothes actually need to be made, how many clothes we really need, it would be very interesting to do that mental exercise and then make clothes for those numbers. And what are those clothes? I mean, we don't want to turn into a dull, expressionless, Handmaid's Tale kind of society, but we certainly shouldn't be making as many clothes as we are. And I also think it's really sad. I mean, Rudo, I don't know what your experience is, but in South Africa, every second young person wants to be a fashion designer because it's a way to be famous and it's glamorous. But we really need teachers and nurses and doctors and people to grow food. We don't need so many fashion designers. So I don't know how to answer your question, Betty. I think there are more questions than answers, and I think that these comments are really, Anu and Nick brought up the same thing, are really important, and I think makes me want to get to work.
Okay, I'd just like to add on to just what Jackie said as well, but answering your question, Betty, and from a practitioner's point of view, I think the first thing is to look at clothing as a need. We've taken it out of our hierarchy of needs, and it's become like clothing is a status symbol and just all these other things that have been attached to it. And then secondly, again, as a practitioner, is if we start looking at fashion as an art form, we will start to value the clothes that we're making. We'll also start to value the clothes that we're buying and the clothes that are being displayed. So, coming from a perspective where I'm a maker and a buyer, when you see something as art, you place a certain value on it and you want to show it off and you want to wear it to as many events as you can. But when you just objectify fashion and look at it as a garment, it is something that you can just buy and throw away. So I think the interpretation of what clothing is what firstly needs to change. And then the value we attach to the clothing that we're putting out and the clothing that we're buying needs to change as well.
Yeah, can I?
Yes, please, Anup. What do you think?
Uh, the thing is, uh, you know, in our design school, we learn a process called design process. Before you design anything, you need to follow a process called design process. And in design process, there come several steps. One step is brainstorming, where you are taking lot of things around, and you are taking the ideas, inspiration from these things. Then in the time of brainstorming, before conceptualization, you need to take these 3 points. One is circular design, should be circular. Design should be circular economies. Your design must fit in this group, otherwise you are a failure designer. One part is that. Another thing is, what I need to say is, we need to widen the circle of the circular design. It's not only designers. We need to widen the circle of this circular design. We need to teach people to accept circular thing in their own life. Then only your design and then only your concept will sell. We need to tell the producers who producing your designs that please accept this circular thing. This too is very important. I have to say that much. Thank you.
I think there are, just like you have said, Jackie, there are so many questions coming up, more questions than answers. And I think this is actually, it sounds like, there's more conversations that can come out of all these questions that we are asking, trying to really find out why we are doing all these things we are doing and how can we actually make people want to live in a certain way. Just like you have said, we have to start with the social makeup and all those things. Yeah, it's really interesting to know what is happening on the ground. And I think we need more conversations. But just as last words, what can we say, each one of us, about the work that we have been doing, and what you think can be done in the immediate future to sort of like bring this into reality for an individual in the community? Anyone can start.
Well, Betty, for me, I think it is about continuing these conversations and trying to diversify. I think that there's a real threat. We here we feel a real threat at the moment around isolationism, borders going up, and things. But there is a flip side too. There is a reflective process that's going on about what do we need. Literally, I'm not supposed to leave my house at the moment, so getting access to things and so on is I'm very privileged to say something that we have to think about in ways that we don't often have to think about. And I do think it's helping us to redress this notion of need and want, desire and meaning, as I say, cultural meaning, social value. And I think if we can diversify design away from its current kind of demands into something that's much more diverse, then I think circularity can really help us to get there in a meaningful way. I think that can do something very, very powerful. So I think we need to keep talking and keep learning from each other really about where this diversification provides something that we all can learn from, but we have our own individual and independent and self-defining, but also positively self-serving versions of the same thing.
I'd be happy to go on and add that we need to make it more accessible and just invite more people into the spaces that we're working in as well. Be willing to share our ideas, be willing to share processes, but also, yeah, make it a very accessible and a very safe space to come and try new things out.
Jackie, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't really have much to add to that, but I think that open source and sharing is really, and the collaboration is so important, just to grow the tribe, obviously as quickly as possible.
Okay, Anup, any last words? I can see Professor Kanyati, I can see Madam Piri joining us. Thank you so much. Anup, any last words?
Yeah, acceptance. Without acceptance, you are nowhere. Accept.
What we need to accept.
Yes. The last word is acceptance. That's it.
Okay. All right. Professor Kanyati, are you there? Would you like to add something to the conversation? Okay, I think he's. Are you able to join us to say something, Professor? Hello. I can see the mic is not on mute, but I can't hear anything. Can anyone hear something? Okay, I think we are having a connection challenge there. Mr. Banda, any last words you have to add to the conversation? Okay. Oh, okay.
Can you hear me, Betty?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think for me, there are lots of lessons here. I think I'm hearing we shouldn't be making more clothes, and I totally agree with that to some extent. For people like us, well, grown-ups. And Anupam, I think you just made a point there. You don't buy trousers anymore. And I'm just thinking, how many times have I been buying trousers as well? Because I'm not changing. I'm just today. And I think I'm also in the same, space as yours. But I think what I'm thinking is to get rid of what I have, because I still have lots, possibly 2-3 suitcases of things that I'm not wearing. What should we do with such things? And when you're talking about questions, than answers that we have, I'm already thinking that this conversation will actually strike more questions from the wider audience, which I think you should be prepared as a panel to respond to, because it's a very, very interesting conversation. And well, I'm super excited about it. So well done for all the great works that you're doing there. But I think as a country, for example, Zambia, we need to do a little bit more raising awareness, so that maybe one day we could be like India, or could be like South Africa, or could be like UK, and we can all continue to learn from each other. I think that's it from me, Betty, and the rest of the team. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Really, we are short of time, and I wish we could go on and on talking about this, but I know how busy you are. And just like Mr. Banda has mentioned, hopefully we can continue these conversations, and we can find more answers, and together we can start building a better world, because the whole point is really to build a better world for everybody, where our resources are not depleted, and we are thinking about our children and our grandchildren and our great grandchildren, and the world that they are going to find when they get here. So I think that is really what is important. And yeah, I think we can, we'll continue talking about these conversations, and trying to spread awareness about circularity and the benefits of circularity, and what is good about it. So everyone, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And yeah, it was great to see you, all of you, again. And yeah, we'll meet in the next conversation. Yeah, thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.